welcome to the second episode of Foolproof's Table. We're doing it slightly different this time. We're not cooking, we're not at a table, but we are in the kitchen. So Amber and I have gone a little bit off the rails. Cocktails.
It is lockdown after all.
It is lockdown, so anything we can do to cheer ourselves up. No, but Amber and I know, have a shared love of cocktails, and we'll probably get to that at some point as we are. About to say cooking, but creating, shaking, one of the two. But yeah, today we are going to be covering off a little bit more about the industry, a little bit more about Foolproof, and I guess a lot about how Amber and I both came to be at Foolproof, how we met, how we know each other, and yeah, probably some tips and tricks along the way just for getting into the industry. So rather selfishly, Amber, I'm going to kick off with myself, if that's okay.
Fine.
So I'm Amy, as I mentioned, and I'm a principal consultant at Foolproof. And I actually started at Foolproof nearly 7 years ago now, as an intern. So I interned at Foolproof for around 3 to 6 months. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how kind of I got there, but I have progressed through to consultant, through to senior consultant, and now very recently a principal consultant at Foolproof, which is super, super exciting. I joined Foolproof as an intern and discovered, I guess, the industry and Foolproof almost by accident through networking. So when I was at uni, I basically decided that I needed to think about a career, funnily enough, and ended up discovering Foolproof quite local to the university I went to. So I went to Norwich University of the Arts, and I got talking to some creatives, some people that were working in the industry in Norwich, and uncovered Foolproof, and the rest is history. But there's a couple of kind of elements in that story that I know Amber relates to quite closely. So Amber, do you want to talk a little bit about how we know each other and how we came to meet?
Yeah, okay. So I'll introduce what I do at Foolproof first. So I'm a UX designer at Foolproof. I kind of started as a UX designer, and that's kind of why I wanted to join Foolproof. And my kind of role revolves in like solving like complex tasks and user journeys. But I didn't start off in digital at all, really. My course at the Arts University was around designing for publishing. So when I first wanted to design, as much as I love packaging, I also loved Vogue. And I was like, oh, I'm going to design the magazine for Vogue. I'm going to design GQ. And that's kind of how I started my journey at NUA. And then I think in my first year, I got asked if I wanted to go on a trip to Barcelona, and that's where I met Amy. So I think I was one of 5 first years that joined the third years, and Amy was in her second year. We kind of like tagged along, bonded over sightseeing and cocktails. So that kind of links to what we're doing today. So yeah, that's kind of how we met, how we became friends. And I still remember Amy graduating and sending me a message on Facebook like, oh, I'm torn. I don't know whether to do this internship or whether I should go for this other job. And I knew from day one that she was really excited about the Foolproof intern. And yeah, glad she took it, because now we're both here and both doing super well. So
I think there's like a few things to unpick in that, isn't there? So yeah, definitely we'll get to cocktails in a moment, because this evening we are making a pina colada, because what else do you want to be making when it's snowing a blizzard outside? Is where I am. I don't know about you. But yeah, I think so. A few things in terms of like Norwich University of the Arts, where we went. I guess at uni, like it's really hard to know where you want to venture into, isn't it?
yeah,
Like,
definitely.
I think you very much we did kind of similar courses. We were definitely in the same area, weren't we? But I was in graphic communication, and I know you were in kind of graphic design and more towards the print and publishing area.
Yeah.
and it kind of, at the time, it felt like, yeah, I didn't really know what direction I wanted to take my course in, and I think that's the advice I've always given to kind of other people when they're at university, like having a creative degree behind you opens up so many doors, and often too many, though, I think, right? And so that's where like networking for me came in, and I guess in a similar way to you, when you think about keeping in touch with me and other people in the courses that we've done, I guess it sort of opens your eyes to what else is out there, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in my second year, although I was doing publishing, there was a few different people that would come into uni. So we had chats and briefs from two that I took part in. So one was for the Sunday Times, so redesigning their iPad publication, so their digital platform, but still with print in mind. And then I won that pitch and then went to do an internship. And then that internship paid into a paid role with them for the whole summer for my second year, which was really exciting at the time. I remember being like, oh, I'm back at the Sunday Times, being a second year student, walking around London, pretending I was like a big shot. So that was really good fun. And then my second internship was with a spa magazine. So Good Spa Guide came to us and kind of wanted to do another publication around like spa reviews and stuff. Obviously being a girl loving spas, that was a nice little task to do, and we won that as well, me and two other girls on my course, and then we launched that magazine within like a really nice plush spa and got like champagne all day. And they're like good contacts to keep, even though I didn't turn into publishing. Even at my degree show, they came along and approached me afterwards. So although it wasn't the right route for me in the end, they were really good contacts to have. So it's always nice to keep in contact with people along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing you mentioned, I guess, when you were kind of referring to kind of how we kept in touch was that kind of dilemma I had of, do I go for the internship or do I kind of go for the job? And I think like at the time there were a number of different factors that played into it. I think one of the elements is kind of a security of having a job as opposed to like an internship, right? But I think it's particularly at Foolproof, when we look at the way that our internship kind of opportunities are shaped, I think every single one of the interns that we've kind of taken on or that we have had join our ranks has always stayed at Foolproof.
Yeah, it's really nice to see.
For a period of time at least, to kind of explore their career and look for opportunities within Foolproof itself, and then progressing elsewhere perhaps later on. But I think not to say that it's right for everyone, but I do know that in creative careers, internships are one, highly sought after. So not to say that it's easy to walk into, but I think they are a really good opportunity, particularly when you don't quite know which direction.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to go into. Okay. Should we start making?
Yeah, let's start.
Slightly fearful that I have kind of no idea how to pronounce anything in front of me, but we're going to go with the rums and the fruit juices and probably make a lot of noise with shaking, which I had to dust off, I won't lie. Haven't used since Christmas. But apparently we literally add everything in to the shaker. So I'll talk you through what we're going to add in, and then we give it a good shake and strain it over crushed ice and enjoy. So we're going to go with the rums first. And measure as accurately or inaccurately as you choose. But we're going to go for the rums, and we're going to add them into the shaker with some ice. So I'm going to grab my ice. Have you got everything there with you?
I have, yeah.
Well, so I guess while I'm getting the ice out of the tray, what would you say in terms of the kind of things that you uncovered at uni? I know you were particularly thinking about print at that time, but what would you say some of the skills that you have perhaps transferred into now what is UX and digital design?
Yeah, definitely. I think although I was doing publishing, a lot of the lessons I learned really transferred quite well over to web design. So things for like grids, obviously that's super important when designing for web, especially when you're scaling down from desktop to mobile. Typography as well, that's just as important on paper than it is on the websites, especially with like accessibility and things like that. And also just kind of having an editorial background is really nice then sitting on websites, because a lot of them have gone kind of editorial based. So you can look at websites and be like, that literally just looks like a website lifted from a magazine onto a page. And I think that's really where I started to feel more confident with web design. And then I think my route then into web was learning through articles online. So that's kind of how I almost fell into UX and why I wanted to do it. So the way I learned was kind of like best practice on this, like best practice on search fields, best practice on forms. And it would always be UX related and kind of research led as well. So although I hadn't really heard of UX at university, a lot of the stuff that I was learning for designing for websites when I was at another agency was all really UX based, not just kind of, it looks nice on a page and it kind of, the elements that need to be on there. It was more about learning why they're there.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always really liked about it, because I wasn't just doing something that looked nice, I had a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think then that's kind of why then going from an agency that kind of doesn't do much research, then I wanted to kind of branch into more research-led evidence-based design.
Yeah. It's really interesting you talk about like some of those transferable skills that I guess like don't really seem that obvious when you think about the creative path that you started on. And I know for myself, so all of my A levels were science and maths.
Oh yeah, I did psychology and geography, completely random.
And I kind of like wanted to call that out because I know so many people when they like approach Foolproof or when they approach me or we kind of have a conversation about like their background, so many of them kind of get a bit nervy about like not having design skills to kind of broadly term it, or kind of I guess experience in being creative. But I think we all are to some extent. It's just about shaping that, and UX is such a broad field that it allows so many people an entry point. So when I kind of think about me having, I guess not even like a passion for science, I was kind of just good at it. And I don't mean to sound big-headed, but some people are more kind of like logical and kind of when it comes to some of their ways of thinking. And for me, that's what then aligned so like, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, my goodness, there's this career out there that allows me to kind of apply all of that statistical, scientific, genuinely curious around like how things work and why they work in a certain way with like, oh, and I find design really interesting, and actually that kind of creative side of me just absolutely explodes when I think about the reasons why people do things and how we can fix them. And so I think that's a really important point. Like we've talked a lot about our kind of creative path to UX, but it's not always that plain sailing, is it? And I think that UX has so many different opportunities for people. Go for the rum now. Okay. I'm sitting here and it's wafting in my direction.
Which one did you go for first? I think we've got two different types.
Yeah, so I'm going to add the dark rum first. Okay. And it's set to add 25 ml. Now this bottle is 150, so I'm not great with percentages. She says, having done an A level in maths, but I think that's about right. And then you need 25 ml of the white rum as well. This one's slightly easier to measure because this one's only 50 ml. And then the coconut puree.
This looks like it'll be difficult to get out.
It does, but it sounds delicious in itself, doesn't it? It says 30 to 40 ml, depending on taste. I really love coconut, so I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, I'm a Bounty lover, which is quite controversial. So
yeah, I like drinking coconut, not eating it. I should say. Yeah, can't cope with a Bounty. They're the ones that get left in the chocolate selection. I've pretty much used all of that. I won't lie. That's I've got. How are you getting on with your measurements?
I've actually had to use. I've used scales, so I'm being very careful because I've left my measure. Okay, I feel like.
And then you added the pineapple juice, yeah?
I have, yeah.
Amazing. Let me add that as well.
Good. This is the noisy part.
So before you shake, I guess, like, I was just going to run through what we've added for anyone that does fancy making themselves a pina colada. So we've got 25 ml of dark rum, 25 ml of white rum, and then we have got around 40 ml of coconut puree, 100 ml of pineapple juice, added them all to a shaker, and we're going to shake and then strain it over crushed ice. This is going to be really noisy. I'm sorry for everyone in advance. I'm going to make sure my lid is firmly on.
Oh gosh, yeah. Start repainting.
This is where we're not going to be able to get it off again though, aren't we? Right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Wasn't that loud?
Oh, okay, it came off. That was the bit I was worried about. Have you got like a strainery thing, or are you just going for it?
I'm gonna have to go bits and all.
Right, I've even got some crushed ice. Crushed with a rolling pin, might I add, just for total transparency. Right, we're nearly there with the noisiness, and then I promise we'll get back to it. And then, have you poured yours? Oh my gosh, you're way ahead. Okay. It smells amazing, I won't lie.
It does smell a bit like sunshine.
And making a pina colada. I think I might just be living my best life, as they say.
You might have missed one team trip, but we're definitely reliving it on a Monday.
That's it. So, and I've got no fancy garnishes, but I do have these.
Oh, you should have given me a heads up. I could have got like a little, what are they? The garlands that you get. I think I've got one from Lola Lowe's. Years ago.
So I guess back to we've talked quite a lot about how we got into our careers, how we found Foolproof, and I think now I'd like to kind of understand how you feel now you've been at Foolproof for what? How many years now?
It's going to be 2 years, April Fool's Day. I still hate that I had to walk into the office on April Fool's Day like, oh, I'm new, am I meant to be here? I was still waiting for someone to say no, it was a joke. But yeah, it'll be 2 years, April the 1st, which has flown by.
It has flown by. I guess, how has it been for you coming from that kind of background, as you say, working in then digital, but then really finding that specific niche for UX? I guess, how has it been, first of all?
I think I remember my first project at Foolproof. It was a heavily around user research, which is obviously a massive plus for me, that the first project I got was heavily around that and not as much around design. And I think being able to have a purpose and actually see users using a design that you've kind of put into the research and the pain points that you might not necessarily have thought of, them skipping over bits of copy that you thought actually they would read, which then kind of deterred them from going through the journey and actually being with the client and having that confidence to stand there and be like, oh, I designed it like this, but maybe we use it like this because of like what we've found in the research, and having that going back and forth with the consultant that has like the user needs like always in mind in the questions that they're going to ask, to kind of help me then get into that UX mindset of these are the problems that you need to solve. These are kind of things that I've learned from previous research that's kind of worked or hasn't worked. That was a big thing for me, obviously being new and not having much user research. You take so many lessons from all the different researches practice that you do, even if it's not kind of always linked to the specific needs of that project. There's always so many different things like buttons, like where you place the buttons. I used to think that users probably would read more text than they do. They don't read hardly anything. They lose concentration really quickly. But there's so much collaboration at Foolproof, which I thought there was when I first joined and hoped that there was, but there definitely is. I learn on all the projects I've been on, especially from other people as well. You're not the only kind of designer on the project. Even if you are maybe the only designer, you have a consultant, which a lot of you have design minds, even if you don't think you do. But yeah, I think you're really put at ease here, and everyone does help. Even like, we have all them like don't die on us channels on Slack where it's like, help, I need this, and I'll cries for help. And everyone steps in to share their learnings, which is really nice. There isn't like a cockiness around it. It's like we're all here to learn, we're all here to do the same job.
There's that kind of there's that label that kind of gets put on it, right? Like cross-discipline teams, multidisciplinary teams, like. But I think that we've always done that, despite kind of being a buzzword, or despite it being sort of something that lots of companies strive for. I think within Foolproof, that is how people learn and progress so quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
That's certainly one of the major reasons why, like, I'm still here, you know, starting as an intern and literally finding my feet. So within in the kind of internship program, I very much kind of knew that I wanted to be a part of Foolproof and knew that I wanted to understand UX, but I didn't know in what capacity. So actually I kind of came in as an intern and explored a little bit of kind of the client engagement side of things, the delivery side of things, the design side of things, and also the consultant research side of things, which is where I've ended up. But there's so much room for kind of transition across those. Yeah. So one of the lovely girls that I like manage has actually kind of started her career in Foolproof as a consultant and is now transitioning into design. Yeah. And I think that's what's so important to kind of remember when you are starting a career or when you're thinking about things, is that it doesn't have to be defined up front. And that's kind of collaboration is so important, because you are constantly learning and constantly going, well, I kind of want a little bit of that, or that's really interesting, and all bouncing off.
And I think that really reminds me of one of my like first conversations when I came for an interview at Foolproof, or like the initial chat, the initial stage. I remember them saying to me, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do? Like, what position do you want? I was like, oh, I've applied for designer. But then the more I kind of spoke to them, I was like, oh, do I want to do that? Like, do I want to be a consultant? Like, is that how I'm coming across? And they were very good at reassuring me that if it came down the line that design wasn't for me, then I can cross over to consultant. I know wouldn't need to worry about leaving and going anywhere else, or that they would turn to me and be like, well, you applied to be a designer, so you're pigeonholed now. And it was very much like, you'll have so much exposure to the research side of things as a designer, and you really do help with like the discussion guides and stuff, and you're not kind of left to just do the design, and you're not allowed to look at the research and you don't have any input. It's really nice that it's collaborative, because even if it isn't your role, you still get to learn experiences from consultants. But then if it is that you really do fall in love with that, you can then skip over to it, which is really nice.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that so much of how you learn is obviously through other people, as you've rightly said. But I think it's also really important to kind of appreciate the skills and the experience that loads of us have across the business, and how all of that feeds into the great work that we do. I'm going to pause and ask how your pina colada is, because mine is
Really good.
amazing. Honestly, it's really nice. If anyone fancies a pick me up during lockdown, then I would absolutely encourage getting yourself a pina colada and
When my
pretending.
holiday's cancelled again, I think I'll be to lean into these on a Monday.
So, speaking of the beach, you mentioned in passing team trip earlier on, and I guess like some of the benefits of Foolproof, we've talked about the people, we've talked about the
Yeah.
collaboration, talked about I guess the environment, which I think I'm incredibly biased as a researcher. I'm just going to call out that I'm incredibly biased, but you know, as an environment, I think it's a wonderful one in which and encourage people to kind of push themselves and, as you say, challenge themselves if they want to explore something new. But talking about kind of the benefits of Foolproof, this is one of the biggest questions that I get when it comes to what's it like to work at Foolproof. I guess how would you summarize life outside of the work at Foolproof and the culture?
As cheesy as it sounds, I would just say full of banter. I think we all just really, I think because we respect each other so much that, and everyone knows that, you can have that banter and people don't kind of take it like to heart. Like we know we're having a laugh, and because we are all as a family, like we are quite close, and that's how we work so well together.
Mhm.
It's easy to have that banter and that closeness with each other. But I think although we have obviously the team trip and it's all very exciting when it doesn't get cancelled because of COVID, and beach trips and stuff, which obviously do pull you as like a possible candidate of like applying, there is so much more like in terms of actually being in the office.
Yeah,
Like we don't all wait till team trip to have fun and talk to each other and bond and stuff like
yeah.
that. And it isn't like forced fun either. Like it all just feels really natural, which is nice. Um, so yeah, just like a family banter in in the nicest way, like brothers and sisters.
I think it's a really nice point to touch upon, and it does. I mean, we are completely like blowing Foolproof's trumpet here, but what what I think is admirable to see, and I know so many businesses, every business has had to adapt as to kind of like what's happened across the world. And I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna give it a label because we all know what's going on at the moment. But I think Foolproof very much kind of are a digital service agency anyway. Like we are digital and we work through screens so much of the time. And I think there was a huge danger of feeling like it was just going to carry on as normal, but we've adapted. I think because, as you rightly say, like we're used to being in the office, we're used to having banter, we're used to kind of having conversations across desks and off the side of our desks, but we still have kind of regular studio catch-ups across the design and consultancy team, still have team meetings, we still have our kind of team away days as such, although we're not going anywhere. And I think all of that has been really kind of lovely in a way, just to keep going and to ensure that all of those things you've mentioned are still there despite everything that's going on. And I know that the future of working at Foolproof is still kind of, in terms of where we're going to be and how we're going to work, that's ever changing. And I think that's quite exciting in a way, because I know that again we're not stuck in Norwich, London, Singapore, South Africa, India. We are ever expanding. So location also is becoming, it's open now. It's less
Yeah.
less of a restrictor, isn't it? Okay, so I know that we are slowly running out of time. I'm not running out of pina colada, but so I guess what I just wanted to touch upon last thing before we finish is, I guess, the process of what to do if you want to become a part of Foolproof. And you talked about your interview and how that went. So could you just talk through a little bit more of maybe what to expect from that process?
Yeah, sure. So I remember kind of first of all seeing that there was a position available on the website. So yeah, one of those stalkers that would constantly have a little look to see if there was anything coming up. And I was quite nervous at applying just because Foolproof are such UX experts, so I didn't really have much like project experience in that field. So I remember kind of messaging you and being like, right, Amy, I need to put together a portfolio that kind of shows off that I do know about UX to a certain like examples, like what's best to show, like how do I kind of play it, and then I submitted my portfolio, and got an email from our lovely HR Carolina to invite me in for a chat, and it was just like an initial chat where I did kind of speak through my portfolio, but it wasn't really too heavily around that. It was more about what I wanted to get out of Foolproof, what I kind of wanted the role to be, just so they could kind of, I think, make sure that they could give me what I wanted as much as I could give Foolproof what they wanted from someone, to work for them. And it was really casual. It wasn't, well, I was nervous, obviously, but it was quite casual, and I was put at ease with the chat. And it was very much like, we want to get to know you a bit around your work, but if we want to kind of hear more from you, then we'll invite you to do a task. So then I think a couple of weeks later, Carolina got in contact again and asked me to complete a task which was very UX based, and a bit of UI as well, which basically in short terms was linking two random words to solve a problem. Mine was around an app and a fridge. So I had to log all the barcodes of my fruit and veg in my fridge, and it would alert me when they would go off to like prevent food wastage. And it would like jumble up and generate recipes to use up my nearly going off rotten veg. So yeah, so I remember putting this together, and a couple of like slideshows, and then I had to present it to Tim, who's now my line manager, and Zoe. So they were both really nice. Although Tim, there was a joke, I think people might have seen it on LinkedIn. Tim didn't turn up to the right office for my interview, and I sat in the Norwich office, and people were like, "Where's Tim? Where is he?" Like, "Oh, he's in London." And I was like, "I'm so sure I am meant to be here." And I was checking my email, like, no, it says Norwich, like I'm working in Norwich office.
You were on your own, weren't you? I remember you ended up doing the interview from the Norwich office on your own, speaking to Tim and Zoe in the London office. I mean, hilarious.
Yeah, I think
to kind of like stress test remote working.
well, yeah, I was ahead of the times. Yeah, so I sat in this big boardroom in Norwich on my own on this sofa, too short to reach the coffee table. So I was like leaning across. Yeah, presenting my task over I think it was like Teams or Blue Jeans or whatever we were using then. They asked me a few questions. So they gave me a bit of feedback at the end. And I remember walking out of that interview, and their feedback was so lovely, but constructive, but in a good, like nice, positive way, which is something that obviously designers love, is constructive criticism, not that I don't like it. And I remember walking out the interview with my head held high, thinking, well, that went well, I was at ease, and I did it. Whether I got that job or not, I obviously did, but I remember thinking, well, I've done like the leap into UX almost, and I kind of feel like yeah, I was going to obviously apply again because I had that bit more of a confidence, but I didn't need to. So yeah, that was kind of, although tasks can seem a bit scary, I think they do give you a bit more of a inkling into what Foolproof do. They're like processes and mindset into projects, which is, yeah, really good.
You've definitely hit the nail on the head. So yeah, I guess to kind of like, to summarize some of the points you mentioned there. So yeah, when thinking about the interview process at Foolproof, obviously it's slightly different for kind of the different roles
Yeah.
that we're offering. And just a side note on that, if you look at the website, and I know that you saw a role that you were like, yes, that's absolutely something that I want to apply for. We're not necessarily kind of just restricted to those roles.
Oh,
You see, right? Because we so often get people contact us, nothing's necessarily advertised, or the role that they're looking for or that they see themselves in isn't there, but we're always open to having that conversation.
yeah.
So that's definitely a takeaway that I'd suggest to kind of anyone watching this thinking, oh, if I don't see something on there, it's like still strike up a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think the other point you've made is like the task element of it. So yeah, we'll always start with a conversation. Part of a huge part of Foolproof, as we've mentioned so far, is the culture and the people. And so that's why we always start with a conversation. Like, do you feel like a good fit for us? And do we feel like a good fit for you ultimately? And then the task, and I know you said there, like, it seems quite daunting, like, oh my gosh, I'm being tested. But and I know that so many creatives get kind of taught this at uni. It's like, it's about the process. It's about thinking, show you're working. And that's kind of my advice. I don't know about you, but that would be my advice to anyone that kind of is daunted or kind of wants to know more about what that involves. It's like, the task element of it is very much to understand just how you approach solving problems. And yeah, would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's just as much about like the generating of ideas, and even just if you're not necessarily nailing that one element, bouncing your ideas and going through that process with another person helps them maybe spark up a little light bulb. So it isn't just, you don't need to be everything and all encompassing. You can definitely add something to a conversation, and
Yeah.
that's how Foolproof works as well, like very collaborative. So yeah, I'd say definitely explain workings, and how you go about things is just as important, if not more important, than what it looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And then I know that so often there's kind of like a final interview or a final conversation that is had just to kind of work things out as part of the process. But again, I know that differs for everyone. So I know I need to kind of tick that box by saying if anyone who has watched this is interested in finding out more, then you can reach out to either of us on LinkedIn or on any channel. And yeah, also obviously Foolproof, there's contact for our wonderful kind of careers team as well if you have any questions. But Amber, it's been lovely talking to you.
Yeah. Enjoying my pina coladas.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of reminiscing about our time in Barcelona, but we will very soon hopefully be either on a beach as to one of our beach trips, or hopefully at the end of this year somewhere enjoying a cocktail on our team trip. But yes, I will catch you at work tomorrow.
Bye.